is the A to Z podcast. Expert insights on leadership, business, real estate, investing, and growth.
Welcome to the podcast. Today I'm excited. I'm going to talk about soft skills with my guest. This is one of my passions, and I'm excited that you are here with me. My guest today, she wrote about it. She provided coaching, consulting about soft skills. She has a podcast about the topic. We're going to dive in. We're going to talk about why we need soft skills, how do we develop them, strategies, tactics, which going to help you starting today or at least tomorrow to implement everything you're going to learn today. And I'm going to bring my guest. Her name is Yadi Caro. She is an organizational psychology practitioner, the author of Hardcore Soft Skills, and a podcaster. Yadi, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me here, Aziz.
Yeah, I'm glad that you are here. We have been planning to have this conversation. Finally, we made it. For people to understand you from where you're coming from, would you please take like 1 minute and tell us who you are and a little bit background about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I am Yadi, and I'm originally from Puerto Rico, a small island in the Caribbean. And I have been working for the past 18 years or so with customers with the primarily military organizations and technical as well, technical teams, developers, engineers. Myself, I'm more a communicator, although I do enjoy working a lot with developers and engineers because I love working with smart people. And project managers and others. And what my roles have been helping people develop products, get projects. I've been in multiple roles, either managing teams, coaching teams. And what I have been focusing for the past 5 years is since I founded Hardcore Soft Skills. It started as a podcast, basically because I wanted to help realizing that a lot of projects and a lot of things that were in development and at work did not succeed. And it wasn't the fact that people lacked the skill per se to do the work. It was a fact of the ability to work together, to communicate, to collaborate effectively. So 5 years ago, I started the podcast to help educate people, and I reach out to experts to identify, hey, how can we improve? What are those skills and how can we improve? And since then, I've had 60 plus, maybe about 100 experts on the podcast. I've also started studies and completed the studies at Harvard in organizational psychology, just to continue to help understand that aspect of what makes teams and succeed at work. And I recently published my book, which is Hardcore Soft Skills. Have it right here, and a guide to work with humans because I wanted a guide that I wish I had to be able to allow people to work together. So it's a collection of exercises that we can do with our teams or individually to help improve a little bit on these so-called soft skills, which we could talk about the fact that they're not soft at all. They're really hard to master, and they're definitely super important at work.
Definitely. We're going to talk about all of that. Since you mentioned organizational psychology, some people may not know what organizational psychology is, and also what do you do in terms of solving problems or creating opportunities to organizations. How do you help organizations as organizational psychologists?
Well, my study, the organizational psychology, is a discipline that focuses on helping make workplaces better, basically, to identify. It's a lot of research about what drives job satisfaction, productivity, identify not only when we think of psychology as just the individual, but it's also the individual in relation to the workplace, and also identifying in the workplace what are those key factors that make work better or that impact the work of a person. And in my role currently, even though I completed those studies, what I do is integrate those principles that I've learned through organizational psychology in my day-to-day work, either as a coach, coaching teams to help become more productive, and also as a manager, having those managerial roles, leading teams, or either project managers or others. So I integrate those practices that I have learned as in organizational psychology discipline, and integrated at work, either to identify how can we make this work better, how can we make better results. So that's how I primarily integrated. Even though my roles in organizations haven't been per se as the researcher of the organization, I integrate those practices in my day-to-day work in the trenches with as a either consultant, team coach, manager, and the roles that I've had in organizations.
Yeah, I hear you. This is very important. Me personally, also, I've been working as an organizational consultant, and I understand what you do, and I know the importance of what you do to organizations to improve their performance, to create productivity, and to create synergy and harmony within the organization. That being said, I want to know when was the first time you said, you know what? Softer skills are very important. Do you remember that time? If not the
Mm.
specific date or situation, do you remember that season where you said, you know what? Softer skills are important. I have to invest on them. And if you remember that time, what did you do following that moment? I'm asking you the origin story of how you started investing in softer skills.
Yes. So when I was working in a few years ago during COVID is when I realized how important that was, because I was working with a team of developers in a military organization over in Germany. And during that time, we had to go from on-site work to all of a sudden we had to deliver something big. We were just starting. I was just starting on that role, and 2 weeks later, they told us, like, okay, COVID is coming. We need to stay at home. It will only be a few weeks. And then it extended and extended. So during that time, we had from being a team that was fully on site, working day to day, side by side, to realize that we have to shift the way we are working to do fully remote, still deliver because we still have a deadline to complete. So realizing that those aspects that were not about the code or the development is like, okay, how do we figure out better ways to collaborate together? How do we figure out better ways to communicate without being side by side? So I kept thinking during that time, and even a little bit before that, I was already consuming a lot of products on in terms of learning how to be, leadership books and others, and then realized that it's not about like the manager coming in to save the day necessarily. It takes effort as a team together to practice these skills. And when I was realizing that the name is called like, oh, these are the soft skills, like the skills that are not necessarily the technical side of the work that you don't learn in the day to day and go to school necessarily to learn, but that you need to apply every day to work with other humans. Realizing how to solve conflict effectively, how to negotiate as well. So I always had that assumption that either you're born with them or you are, either you succeed or perhaps you can learn some about them. But as I research more about it, I realized that there's frameworks and method for each one of these so-called soft skills. So communication can become like a specific science in terms of of methodologies that we can improve in that. Negotiation as well, like taking a course, a class at Harvard in negotiation, open my possibilities, realizing like, oh, there's a formula and a framework for all of these. So that's when I started in terms of during COVID. Then I decided to go ahead and as a communicator that I was before, I started my career 20 years ago in journalism, and I wanted to go back and say like, you know what, I'm going to call people, experts of all these books that I'm reading, get a list of like all the soft skills out there, and I found a list of like 80 plus soft skills. So I went ahead and searched through, found an expert on each one of the skills. Like for example, on productivity, I wanted to talk to David Allen, who wrote the book about getting things done. I'm like, okay, let me call him up, and he responded, and then going that taking that approach of just calling the experts, John Carter for change management, or calling my professor at Harvard for negotiation. And I'm like, hey, let's talk for 30 minutes and let's give some practical advice to people on each one of these skills. So that's how it started. And since then, I have been able to learn more from the people that I've worked with, from my experience, and also from research as well.
Awesome, awesome. You have done a lot of work in the background for where you are today, and I'm sure that a lot of people who are working with you, the people that you are serving, and the organizations that you are empowering, they are benefiting from your hard work.
Mm.
In my case, I have had the same experience. Initially, I didn't know. For example, I've had bad bosses and
Mm.
good and great bosses. Back then, I didn't know what was the difference.
Yeah.
Yes, they had technical skills, but there was a missing link for me to say why this person is better as a leader, why this one wasn't. But at one point in my career as a software engineer, I could be able to see that my job required me to work with, we call them customers, which means if we have any troubleshooting ticket submitted, and if it is assigned to me, I have to call them, I have to work with them and fix that within a given time. If I don't fix it, it's gonna be escalated, my boss gonna know about it. If it is not fixed, the CEO gonna know about it. And I was pressured. And one of the things that I realized that was very important for me as a technical professional to be successful is to know how to get along with the customers. The
Yes.
more I work with them, get along with them, the more I could solve the problem quickly, satisfy them, and get good reviews.
Mm-hmm.
When I realized, and I have seen also some of my colleagues, they're great off chart in terms of technical skills, but they get bad reviews.
Yeah.
And I know some of them, they're not that good technically,
Mm-hmm.
but customers love them. They get great reviews and they are promoted. Finally, I looked back, went decades and trying to figure out what makes the difference between those who are successful taking leadership positions and influencing and those are not. And I realized it was softer skills. When I wrote the book, I think it was 2014 or something, I don't remember exactly, or maybe 15.
Yeah.
When I wrote that book, there was a case. I didn't really mention the name of the organization and the main characters in the book
Mm-hmm.
by name, kind of fictional, but is a true story. A scientist, he was great, and I call him Dan in the book.
Mm-hmm.
He was bringing millions of dollars. He was great in terms of publishing peer-reviewed journals and so on. And his bosses, they realized that we can promote him to become the project manager of a mega research project. Their
Mm-hmm.
thinking was, okay, he's great. He's bringing resources. He knows how to do research. What happened with that within month, he started to have huge problem with the team. The team started to report him to his bosses, and they were some of the A players start to say that I'm walking away from this project, and therefore it was an emergency. And
Mm-hmm.
the leadership, they had to make a decision either to fire him, demote him, or work with him to help him improve his soft skills. Of course, in the book, he decided to work with the leadership. He
Yeah.
got a soft skill coach, mentor, and program. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that you understood the importance of soft skills. I personally understood the critical role soft skills play, and my hope is that those people who watch this conversation, they could be able to see that soft skills are important. They don't need to wait decades to work on their soft skills. They should start today because it
Mhm.
determines their success, whether they're going to be leaders, whether they're going to be influencers,
Yeah.
whether they could be able to do what they want. Because if they don't have soft skills, even if they have technical know-how, they
Hmm.
won't be succeeding. Let me give you an opportunity to respond based on what
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
talking, and then go to the next conversation.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that because it's also, let's assume there are folks that are in positions and they say, you know what, I don't want to be a manager, I don't want to be in a role of leadership. it doesn't matter because I recall that some of the best developers I have worked with are people that are willing to, for example, explain things in a simple language, and being able, those are the ones that get to working in fun projects with customers, and just having the ability, let's say you could be a genius in terms of the particular tool or something along those lines, but you also need to realize that you are working on products for customers. And when you work in products for customers, you need to understand and listen to the customer and let the customer have the trust to tell you what they need, and also kind of work together and collaborate so you are able to develop just better products and better outcomes. Not having those skills to communicate effectively, even with your colleagues, will impede you of having better opportunities in your current role of working in projects that excite you. So it may not even be the fact that you want to be in a leadership or a manager. You may not even want to do that. It's just a matter of giving you the ability to work in better products, and realizing that you need to work with customers, seeing things go all the way through. That frustration that you have, like let's say that you are working on something and it never gets adopted, it could be the fact that you were not able to resolve a conflict effectively. So I think it's very important to realize that it's not a matter of I want a leadership role and therefore I'm going to go to develop my skills in a leadership, academy or anything like that. It's just a day-to-day little things that you can do to improve.
I love you brought this up. I don't remember exactly the number, but there was a statistics. I mentioned it in the book. It was done by MIT, if I'm correct, and they were studying engineers, and they were trying to figure out how many percentage of their time was spent on communication, one of the top softer skills.
Mm-hmm.
They found out 75% or so. I'm not sure about the number right now. It's in the book, but I guess it was 70 or 75% of their time was
Yeah.
spent on communication. Now,
Yeah.
here is the thing. These are engineers, technical professionals. What about other professionals who need to communicate with other people? They're not technical. If technical professionals, engineers, if they spend that much time on softer skill, whether they are leaders or not, these are professionals. Like you said, you don't need to be an influencer or a leader, even just a professional. The majority of your time going to be spent on interacting with people, which require softer skill. If that's the case, whether you want to be a leader or investor, entrepreneur, hey, why don't you just take it seriously? Why don't you become proactive? Why don't you invest on it? Because it determines your day to day. By the way, I want to hear your take on this one. When I work on my soft skills, they're not just for the marketplace
Mm-hmm.
or the workplace. It's for my day to day, for my life in the neighborhood, in my communication with the people around me. And it improves your communication, your ability to get along, to be understood, to understand others, to listen and understand people's emotions. And therefore, whatever investment that we put on softer skills, the return is huge and multiple.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not only at work, it's on, as you say, in our day-to-day relationships. Because, for example, I've talked with some experts on the podcast about listening, and I have a chapter on that on the book. And I figure it's very important because just, for example, one quick tip on that is that just the ability that when you're having a conversation, repeat back to the person what you think they're saying, like, hey, let me repeat back to make sure that we're on the same sheet of music, or just to make sure that I understood. And repeating back could save you so much time. And it definitely helps, instead of you talking with a person and just responding where you actually don't really communicate. Just that technique of repeating back, reflective listening, that is a lifesaver, not just at work, but in communication. Or even small things like when at day to day at work, we have to do meetings, we have to attend meetings. So there are ways to make this a little bit more effective. Like, just for example, just when designing the agenda for the meeting, instead of having the same meeting over and over, I have a chapter that discusses how you could one thing I learned from an expert in the book is that you have an agenda driven by questions that you're thinking, okay, in this meeting we're going to answer these three questions, for example, and you're able to at the end of the meeting walk away with those three questions answered. Just small things that you can do save you a lot of time and help you in your day to day. So when we're saying like go learn about soft skills, you could go after listening to this, go like, hey, let me either grab a book, have a copy of either of our books, and just start, let me do this little exercise here, this recommendation about either listening or how to build the emotional intelligence. Take the time to take that week or that day to apply that, and you'll notice the difference on just these little things. And the important message here is that we all need to make that deliberate effort of learning something and realizing that we suck at a lot of these soft skills, and that we just need to be able to improve on them on the day to day.
You may come back to explain more about listening, but one of the softer skills that I sucked about was listening, part of the communication. I would say the most important part of communication, because communication is a two-way street. And when you are a leader, you think that the more I speak, the more I am taking lead. But like you said, the more you listen, the more people listen to you, the more they know that you care about them. In the book, I went in detail, but I want to give some tips to our audience, if in case you don't dive deeper later about listening. In the book, I talked about three levels of listening, which we share with our workshop participants and our coaches. Level one is where you communicate for yourself. You go to a doctor or to your mechanic, you take your car, or maybe you're trying to buy a home, talking to your agent, stuff like that. Level one is okay when you talk about you, about your car, about your health, about your travel, because it's about you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do the same thing with everybody else, it's hard to listen because you're just talking about yourself. When people talk about something, you smash that, you make it about yourself. Level two is the one you mentioned, which is asking them questions,
Mm-hmm.
paraphrasing, because your intention at level two is not to be heard. At this level, you want to hear them and you want to engage with them. You want to know from where they're coming from, their pain point, what matters the most for them. And I want to hear your point of view on this. People know when you listen to them, whether they're conscious about it or not, they know when you listen to them. And the third and the final, the highest level of listening is hearing what has not been said. I love
Yeah.
powerful saying by Peter Drucker. He said that listening is hearing what has not been said,
Mm-hmm.
listening to what has not been said. And I want to share one story. I don't mention the organization, the person, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to hear yours because I was working on my second and third level because I was so bad. That was one level one in most of my life. Once I realized I was so bad in listening, I was working on level two and level three. And I want to give you level three listening just to give them this is something that could be able to differentiate the levels. I was recommended by someone from the US when I was traveling back, I think it was 2018 or 19. This person knows a CEO in back home in Ethiopia, a major company in Ethiopia, and this person here in the U.S. introduced both of us. He knows both of us, and he mentioned that Ezi is coming to Addis Ababa, and he's a PhD guy in leadership. You could use him while he's there, and I didn't see any enthusiasm from the other person. And then I immediately caught that because if I was not listening at a deeper level, I wouldn't tell what was going on. They didn't say anything, but the email response told me that they're not that much enthusiastic. So I wanted to know, okay, why?
Mm-hmm.
I went there and I met them. During the entire conversation, they were talking about how they are skeptic about these PhD guys. They
Mm-hmm.
were mentioning about Jack Walsh. They came to attend his training, and they were mentioning Jack Walsh was saying that, shove your PhD, da 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 da. So vulgar language. They were using that, and I was sitting there. I was listening at level 3 because I was trying to figure out what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately realized that they're not telling me right away, but
Yeah.
they are saying it
Mm-hmm.
through the conversation that, this is a PhD guy. We don't want him to lecture our people to death, and they didn't
Yeah.
want to take me to their executives. I immediately realized that,
Mm.
started the conversation. You're right. These PhD guys who lecture people to death, I hate them. I joined
You joined there.
them, and they say, you know what?
Mm.
They looked at each other and say, okay, let's take him to
Uh-huh.
the team. We want him to speak to our team. You see,
Yeah.
if I was not listening at a deeper level
Mm-hmm.
from the email
Yeah.
and also from the conversation, I would have missed it. They wouldn't have taken me to the executives. We
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have that opportunity to benefit their organization.
Yeah.
That's why listening by itself, like you
Exactly.
said, very important to our life, to our career, to our
Mm.
business, and therefore we need to invest and work on it.
Yeah. No, that's a great story because I like when you mention about those levels, because that level one that you mentioned about, like, when we speak about ourselves, we should keep it brief. Yes, particularly if when it comes to introductions or networking events or things like that. That level two and three are so important because when, particularly for tech professionals, going back to that, is that for when we engage with customers, instead of engaging with people to explain our solution or how great it is, we need to be able to talk with people and understand what are their concerns, what are their hesitations, and what, of course, what they will tell us or be willing to tell us, because you and I know that a lot of times people, it's rare that people will tell us the whole story. That level three becomes so challenging right now, especially as working with remote teams, because with no cameras, as is in the case of teams I work with, that because of restrictions, there are no cameras around, so you cannot even see the person that you're talking to, as we are, you and I, here on this call. So you have to listen to the silence, or even the tonality, and when they're talking. So it becomes very difficult to have that level of engagement and understanding. So I think um, it is important to continually practice. It's something that I try to practice every single day, particularly with the remote teams that I work with, that have no cameras. It's so difficult. But as what that measure that you took there, that if it's to get to that level three, it requires that extra effort of, you went ahead and met with them in person to establish a conversation and truly understand, kind of like hear them, what they were not saying to you directly. So it requires a lot of practice, and it is important that we continually take that deliberate effort to get to that, understand the others.
The challenge for level 3 is, if you have relationship, let's say you
Mhm.
have a brother or a friend, a colleague, you just bring that up. Are you not trusting me on this? Or are you saying that you're not interested in it? You can bring that up because you know each other and you can spot that. But think about, you are in conflict with someone you don't yet have trust,
Mhm.
or there is an issue that should be resolved, maybe a negotiation, you don't know each other. You hear them, but you can't just bring that up and say, are you talking about me? In my case, for example, they were talking about PhDs, and I
Mhm.
have PhD. I could say, are you talking about me? Do you think I'm like those people? I'm not. I could have become defensive.
Yeah.
Once I listened, by the way, maybe they're consciously or unconsciously thinking that, maybe they're not. It could be just accidental. But
Mhm.
from my point of view, we don't have yet relationship. I cannot just spotlight that and say, are you thinking this? That's why some managers and leaders, they struggle to bring something. Think about, for example, you are a leader, somebody doesn't trust you. They don't tell you in your face that I don't trust you.
Right.
How do you figure that out from the nonverbals? How can you figure that out? The way they are sitting, the way they are communicating, their energy, their facial expressions. You have to read so many things. Now, while you are reading all of this, trying to make sense out of it, you need also to listen to them,
Mm-hmm.
which requires presence. You are doing so many things to understand what they're saying, what they're actually saying, and what they're not saying, but communicating. And then you have to decide how to respond to it. And you have to be very careful. Sometimes people tell me that I discern what people think and I bring that up. No, but you could be wrong. A damaged relationship. Yeah, maybe you're good in listening and you may discern it, but you have to be good in communicating sensitive issues and you have to respect their their space. You won't bring that up. I wish we have more time to talk about this because I liked you mentioning listening. It looks simple, it could be used on a daily basis, but if you think about it, it's not that easy. If you want to develop, you can imagine the other soft skills.
Mm-hmm.
This takes me to the title of your book, Hardcore Soft Skills. I say, well, she's smart because I was struggling when I was writing my book. I called my book Soft Skills That Make or Break Your Success. The pushback I got, I was sending the draft to friends and colleagues. They read it and people whom I wanted them to endorse it, and I send it, and they give me feedback. I don't think these skills that you're talking about are soft.
Mm-hmm.
You have to change your title. I was struggling. I know they're not soft. In the book, I gave analogy. I I mentioned about silk. Silk is soft, but it's very, very hard.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. But in your case, you solved it on the cover. Hardcore soft skills. If I knew that term, or if I could be able to see that, I would have taken that title before you have taken it. Tell me the process. How did you decide to call it hardcore? And
Mm-hmm.
also compare for me between technical know-how and expertise and soft skills
Yeah.
in terms of how important they are, and also which one is hard to develop,
Mm-hmm.
technical skills or soft skills.
Yeah, and it all depends, of course. But from the title, I'm trying to think because I do remember that it I kind of thought of the concept of that I was on a run. I usually when I run I have ideas. So I was just thinking of that contrast between the hard and the soft, and I'm like, it's when we think of somebody being like either a hardcore fan or kind of hardcore and dedicated, that's how I kind of use that and combine those terms when I was thinking for like the name of the podcast, like hardcore soft skills, and from the podcast kind of continue using that for the name of the book, and I kind of every time I think that it is they do. I'm glad I picked the name in the sense that these are not like the nice to have skills, because when I would see before like books about etiquette or soft or like look at people in the eye when you're talking and things like that, and kind of that advice, yeah, that's great, but it goes so much deeper than that we have to be dedicated hardcore about the understanding of how are the nuances of just working with other humans, because these are skills about how can we work effectively with other humans or just get along in our day to day. So when you ask about the hard skills versus the soft skills, one thing that I did mention in the book as well was the fact that the concept, the name soft, it was, I was trying to look at the origin, but I did find that in the 70s there was this research done by the training command in US by US military, and they were doing studies about investigating in terms of how to measure the hard skills that, military working with machines versus those skills that were a little more difficult to measure, and they call them the soft skills because they're like the managerial skills, like the skills that you need to manage a team and supervise. So there were a series of papers that they were trying to identify what are the best ways to measure those skills on for the troops. So I found that interesting as well, and realizing that even today it is very difficult to kind of measure those so-called soft skills. There, of course, as you probably hear all the time, that debate I hear all the time about people saying, don't call them soft, they should be essential skills, human skills, power skills, and that's great. And I support any name that it basically expresses the need to identify that these are not easy, that require the ability to work with others. But the important aspect here, aside from the naming, is that we need to be dedicated to learn those, that we recognize that these are skills, that these are learnable. For your question about what is easier, I think it will depend, of course, because just like, let's say, if you are a coder, you could be more naturally inclined to learn or to learn a particular program, or if you're in data and you are more inclined to, statistics, then you probably, for you, it could become easier. And in some other aspects could become a little bit more difficult. I think it's the same with soft skills that are, in some cases, we could be naturally, let's say, great listeners. We could be like the people that, there's always that friend that we have that we go to because they happen to be a great listener, or people that are able to naturally express complex ideas and turn them into very simple concepts. So for those people, some soft skills could be easier, but for others, for some of us, a lot of these soft skills or hard skills could be very difficult to learn as well. So I think it depends. And I think it's a matter of recognizing what are we naturally good at, either be at those hard skills that are like require a methodology, and also with soft skills. But I think with soft skills is a part of the we are working with humans and with very different variety of humans, and therefore the same method may not work for each when we apply negotiation or others, as opposed if you are working with a machine. So just for that aspect of the diversification of the individuals, I think they could be a little bit more difficult to master.
I agree with you. And I like something that you mentioned earlier, which is about people when they think about, for example, communication, they talk about the superficial,
Mm-hmm.
cosmetic things. Look at this way, dress like this way. These are very mechanical and cosmetic. When we talk about developing these soft skills, we're talking about first understanding them very well, the science behind. Whenever I suggest people, let me help you in your public speaking, they will say, oh, no, I can just go to YouTube, and they talk about how to make eye contact, the kind of gesture to use. That's easy. For them, this is just mechanical, cosmetic. They can go and, what? Okay, next time I look at this, I do this, I speak like this. And there are a lot of coachings and trainings like that. But the coaching and the training that we provide, however, we want people to understand. I can give you one example. For example, when it comes to fear, we're not just jumping and telling them how to overcome fear. What we help them first is to understand how fear is
Mm-hmm.
in existence, or what's the science behind why we are afraid to speak in front of a camera or in front of an audience. And this takes us to the way our brain works. Our brain either fights, especially when spotlight is on us, either it suggests us to fight,
Yeah.
or retreat, or freeze. When you see someone standing in front of a camera or in front of an audience, if they freeze, if they forget something, or if they are restless here and then, sweating and so on, or hiding behind the podium, or shrinking, or low voice, we need to understand how this works, the science behind, before we fix it. And once you understand the science behind how the brain responds, Now it's easy. When I give you suggestions, do this. For example, if I say, when you stand on the podium, don't rush to speak, make eye contact, smile. If you want, come a little bit earlier,
Mm-hmm.
be friend with at least a few people. And when you stand, just look at those people. If you beat that few seconds, and if you know how to calm down your brain from reacting and fighting or retreating or freezing, you are in. You could be able to overcome that. And
Yeah.
therefore, if you address this cosmetically, superficially, you tell people, do all these tricks, shortcuts to overcome fear. That doesn't fix the issue. Or I have to be always there to encourage them and babysit them and cheerleadering them. But if I help them understand the science behind and how to do it and give them tips and strategies and so on, they don't need me. They understand how it works. They could be able to do it by themselves going forward. And I'm glad you brought that. That's why developing soft skills is not easy, because when I was a software engineer working with a major corporation, and you mentioned it about how dealing with technical things, people are not involved. I remember when I was working on the server, I ping it, I know what's doing, I code something, it responds. When I am in front of my laptop, I could even slap the laptop and mistreat it. But
Yeah, yeah.
it doesn't work
And
with
do that
people.
with humans.
Your technical skills as you work with computers
Mhm.
or accounting software or servers, stuff like that, or planes, fine. It's easy.
Mhm.
But when you communicate with people, when people come to the equation, soft skills beat all the time, and
Mhm.
they derail and sabotage somebody's off-chart technical skills. In the book, actually, I gave comparison between Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
was hard on that one. And I was saying, if the two didn't come together,
Right.
Apple won't be here. Steve
Exactly.
Wozniak, whatsoever off chart technically he was, he wouldn't be able to pull it off without the soft skills, the marketing, the designing, the ability to sell. Apple by Steve Jobs, Apple multi-trillion dollar company wouldn't be here.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that story of the two Steves is a great example because it shows the fact that in order for us to, as technical individuals, to develop better things and greater things, the ability to collaborate with others is important. And I think what you mentioned there is very important as well about the fact of knowing the reasoning behind like how our brain works and how the importance of not just giving that superficial advice of, as I go back to the point of looking at people in the eye, because even for myself, I have struggled with that a lot. Like I'm an introverted person, or even for other neurodiverse individuals that just looking at people in the eye may become a little difficult and kind of get you distracted. So those are it all kind of, there are different tactics that we can apply, but once we know how our brain works, but also we have, if we have that genuine interest in people, that we realize like, hey, I need to work with people, I have a genuine interest in people, and I need to come from us as individuals with a little bit of humility coming into to recognize that we can learn a lot from others, that we should be able to collaborate with others, that at the end it will help us to become better at whatever we are doing. So just knowing that reasoning, we don't have to be like tell somebody who is naturally grumpy, let's say, like, no, no, you need to smile all the time, like no, 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 it's not about that. It's about like having that genuine interest in helping people or in other people, and figuring out like, okay, we're different, we are very different folks, so let's go ahead and figure out the best ways to collaborate together, to listen, to figure out how we can establish the rules of engagement of how to collaborate, which is an advice that I give to the teams. When we have to work with different types of teams, just the simple fact of establishing like, hey, here are the team rules. We're going to communicate via this chat. We're going to do this. If there's conflict, we're going to do that. Just setting those ground rules saves so much time and effort at the end, instead of a lot of conflict and happening, that at times we expect that the manager or the boss is going to come and save the day. No, we need to be able to set the rules and work through the conflict, which is great. Having conflict is good as well. So all these things comes from a genuine interest in working and helping other people.
Yep. These are really great points. I want to talk about the three top softer skills. There are many softer skills, but if you have to pick the top three softer skills, what are these? And let's go one by one quickly. Tell me about the top softer skill from your perspective, and how can people develop that softer skill starting today or tomorrow or
Yeah.
next week. And I'll interject to share something, but I want to start first with you and tell us your top number one softer skill, how you developed it, how do you help other people develop that, any strategies, any resources, or any approaches that you suggest to the audience?
Yeah, and it's very hard to pick the top three skills, because even just in the book I have like 20 plus that I want to address, and I was thinking that there were even
I
more.
have 12 of them and I understand, very tough. But if you have to pick,
We need more
just
books.
pick, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so and if you asked me this question yesterday, I probably given you a different answer as well. So for the ones I'm thinking today are listening, of course, because I think that also kind of encompasses empathy and the importance of understanding where the other comes from. So as a skill, it's very important, because let's say we're bad at it a lot of times, and we need to be better at listening, because it saves time and it helps us understand the needs of the others and learn and become better learners too. So that's one. Also, I was thinking of another one that
Before you
yeah.
go, Yadi, we will go one by one. I want to add something, especially some of the techniques that I have used. I was so bad. I was listening on level one.
Mhm.
And the first time I realized when I was bad, I read a book by John C. Maxwell. He is one of the leadership gurus. In his book, he talked about how he used to struggle to listen, and he started to go with a notepad whenever he has a meeting, a conversation with someone, and he used to write capital L for listening, L on the top right corner of his notepad.
Okay.
Sitting there, he listens when he's tempted to interfere, to listen at level one. He didn't say level one, but I understand that he was listening at level one, as I used to be. He looked at the capital L on his notebook, and that reminds him not to interfere, listen, and so on. I used that, it helped me. I remember one time I had this technical professionals, I was their supervisor, and they start to give me some compliments. Izzy, you are a great listener. You listen and so on. They didn't know I was writing L,
Oh,
trying to listen.
that's a good
And
advice.
at one point, I felt embarrassed. Look, these guys think I'm listening and it's natural to me. They didn't know behind the scene how I struggle. So I admitted, I told them, I know you guys, thank you. You appreciate that. I'm listening to you, but I don't want to take credit. And I brought out the notepad and I showed them, this is how I discipline myself to learn.
That's
They laughed about it. Oh, okay. You were like, fake it until you make it. You were faking it. Why didn't you tell us before? I
Mhm.
said, I was learning,
Yeah.
which means you have to use some techniques until you learn listening.
Yeah.
Right now, even today, after working on my listening, I discipline myself. Before I go and meet someone, I take time. It could be while I'm driving or dressing.
Mhm.
I need to listen. I remind myself, look, I have to be present. I have to forget everything. And when I go there, when I'm drifted, when
Mhm.
I am not listening, I immediately catch myself. Sometimes I apologize. Sorry, I was thinking something I lost, because they may already know that I'm lost.
Yeah.
Or sometimes if I know them, I tell them, look, sometimes I struggle to listen. And if you catch me not listening to you or interrupting you and making it about me, please just slap in my face and then just tell me, listen, easy. I'm
Mhm.
just sharing some of the things that I have been using. Any technique, any approach that you used for you to improve your listening ability?
Yeah, the one I refer to in terms of reflecting back, because that's some is a technique that therapists use, like on coaches, when it comes to working with teams. That hey, if assuming that people already have the, let's say, the response within them. So when it comes to listening, the technique that I have helping a lot with my husband as well was when hearing something, repeating back what they're saying, and that definitely saves a lot of time. Also, trying to think of, there was another one for listening on the with the teams, particularly when in meeting or in meeting settings. It's just important to give the people the time to pause, um, to let them respond. Like when you ask a question to a group and perhaps you don't hear about them immediately, instead of just rambling and going on, you really take a pause. Don't be afraid of silence during a meeting or during a conversation. So for me, that I'm always go, 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 taking that time to, like, let me just pause, don't respond if they haven't responded. That there are a lot of insights when it comes to just taking that deliberate pause to wait to hear what the person is saying, and the best conversations come from that.
I love it. This is also very important in virtual. Sometimes myself, I facilitate if a comment is not coming, if the answers are not coming, I'm tempted to jump in.
Yes.
But I learned that and I start to listen, telling them, hey, I'm waiting for your answers. Maybe the bandwidth, maybe the technology is delaying them, and I wait for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Immediately I start to receive a lot of comment, a lot of questions. But in the past, I used to just rush.
Me too.
Now
Yes.
I just stop, mention it. I'm waiting for your answers. Maybe you are typing, or maybe Zoom is delaying it, stuff like that. Let's go to the second one. What is your second pick?
Yes.
So far,
So.
so good. I agree with you. Listening, especially for people like me, yeah,
Mhm.
listening should be number one. What is your second pick?
Yeah, in this particular times, because there's so many, again, so many skills, but I think the conflict management, and not necessarily seeking conflict resolution, but the ability to manage a conflict that involves, of course, us being able to temper ourselves if we disagree with someone, and just kind of our storm out of the room or something along those lines. There's a series of, there are books that experts have talked to in terms of how to manage conflict effectively, and particularly in a team setting, we need to develop all these tactics that are available to manage conflict effectively and not be afraid of it, because when it's a team that is conflict free, quote unquote, it's not necessarily that's conflict free. It's just that there's a lot of underlying either anger or indifference. If there is a team that is able to manage conflict, like if there's a conflict, like, okay, we differ on ideas, let's talk about it, let's expand about it, without having to turn into insults or screaming matches. I think it's very important for have an environment and a safe place in a workplace to be able to, like, okay, we disagree, let's talk about it. The conversation could get lively, but it doesn't mean that, that we need to, go in and calm it down. It's just like innovation could result from that. So anything that we can do to manage conflict is or have all those tools and tactics to manage conflict, yeah, are very critical today.
Definitely, I agree with you. If there is no conflict, I tell teams, if there is no conflict in
Mhm.
your team, means the team is dead. The only place where you don't see conflict is in the graveyard. As long as
Exactly.
you have two or more people working together, some
Yeah.
form of conflict exists. And
Mm.
I agree with you. One thing that helped me to realize was I took an assessment called TKI,
Mm.
a free version and also paid version. I used both. Initially, when I took that assessment, I could be able to know my most preferred mode when I'm in conflict. And that assessment tells you your most preferred mode and your least preferred mode. Mine that time was avoiding was my top preferred mode, which means
Mhm.
if we enter into conflict, my first approach is avoid it.
Yeah, that's bad.
Partly it worked with my personality because I have preference for introversion, and therefore I just take walk or just find excuse to stop that conversation because I want to avoid it. I don't
Mhm.
want to have conflict. And then maybe after an hour, maybe after a day, I may come back. In
Yeah.
the past, I used to be very passive aggressive. I
Hmm.
avoid it initially. When I come back, you better hide. Sometimes I come like this
Yeah.
passive aggressive, but I realize that that's my mode. But I realized that as a leader, I can't always avoid.
Hmm.
Sometimes I need to be assertive.
Yeah.
And I remember the struggle I had. I recruited some of my close friends, telling them that I realized from this assessment that my to go to mode is avoiding, but I don't want to avoid going forward. For every disagreement that we're going to have, I want to be more assertive,
Hmm.
more competing, and please don't take it personal. And I remember the next day or so somebody said, let's go to eat lunch here, and I asserted,
Hmm.
and I said, why should we go there? What about this one? And they were
Hmm.
like, but initially it was hard for me. You could
Yeah.
hear from my voice that
Hmm.
I was struggling because I was a little bit like tight. No, why
Yeah.
should we go there? Why
Yeah.
don't you? And then I was working on how to be assertive without
Yes.
damaging the relationship. Again, what I'm doing is I don't want people to assume that by just attending workshops on conflict resolution or by just picking some tricks, you cannot fix it. You have to understand
Hmm.
first the background, the science. We
Yeah.
all have most preferred mode, but we need to figure out how to develop the other modes.
Yeah.
And depending on the situation, the person you are interacting with, you may decide, you know what, I'm going to avoid. Maybe I want to compete, or maybe I need to quickly compromise. Maybe I need to avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to accommodate.
Hmm.
That's very, very helpful. And I encourage everybody the TKI assessment.
Okay.
They have a free version. They can try that one.
Yeah. No, that's great. And when you mentioned there about um the the fact of when do we choose to avoid a conflict, and I was in the podcast talking with some expert about it, that one thing that could help us define, okay, what's the cost of avoiding the conflict or confronting the conflict. So we need to evaluate, like, okay, if I keep avoiding this
Exactly.
conflict, what's it going to cost me? My mental sanity, the outcome of work. So we have to think of those things to be able to realize, like, okay, the costs are too high, we need to address it. So
Exactly.
that's a kind of a good measure that we need to identify, because it is very comfortable. Like, I'll just avoid conflict and then it'll magically disappear. Like,
It goes
no,
away.
not at
It
all.
doesn't go.
Yeah, not
Now,
at
what I
all.
do is when I'm in conflict, I quickly think while I'm on my feet, trying to figure out how do I need to respond to this.
Hmm.
I actually tell myself inside of me, they don't hear me, Easy, okay, I know you prefer to avoid. I know that's your to go to, but
Yeah.
what do you think we should do now?
Yeah.
At least by posing it, this is a situation, this is a person.
Yeah.
How should I respond? That little pause gonna
Hmm.
make a huge difference because you may say something that you may regret, or you may avoid an opportunity where you could have been assertive, so that you send a message, whatever you do. Before we finish, I want to hear the third one and the
Yes.
last one. Yeah,
Yeah, so I think particularly in these times, the skill to adapt. Adapting is a skill, because even though we may think that naturally we are people that could just like, hey, I love change. I could just be, going to a new country and it will be perfect for me, or a new role. I'm good with that. In some cases, that could be the case, but in other cases, regularly, we're not comfortable with change or adapting to change. So having that skill set of, for example, if situation changes at work, we need to be able to identify, like, okay, what would be good from this situation, and be able to refine, to identify those things that could be beneficial, and find perhaps the good in that, and identify what skills that I have right now could help you with that change that is coming. So those are just some examples of how can we develop the ability to adapt, and which also involves the ability to learn new things. So in this market that we're so scared because changes are coming, not just AI specifically, but just reorganization in organizations, or it's our roles. We just have to accept the fact that change will be coming. It will be good. So now I need to develop the ability to adapt. It's not always comfortable. I need to do day-to-day things that get me out of that comfort zone, and that's what helps us grow. So it's very important to learn how to adapt.
Awesome, awesome. Before we finish, we are at the top of the hour. Before we finish, anything you want to say, last minute suggestion or comment? And also, how can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have my website where I have a link to the book that you can get either there or Amazon, and the audiobook is out right now as well. So it's hardcoresoftskillspodcast.com. That there I have almost 200 episodes talking with experts, short episodes, all different things that if you want to take some time to learn tactics about specific skills, you can learn them there. So there's my website, and also you can reach me via LinkedIn here, and LinkedIn that I love to connect with people, and I connect one on one. So meaning I love hearing messages, feedback. So that's the best. Those are the best ways to contact me.
Thank you very much, Yadi. We had a very engaging conversation. Thank you for coming, and I encourage everybody, please find her on LinkedIn, get her book, continue to work on your softer skills. Thank you, Lowell, for your comment. Going forward, I'm gonna keep on bringing some experts on softer skills. Maybe we can pick one of the softer skills, dive deeper. For now, we got a lot out of this conversation. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you with another podcast. Have a great weekend. Thank you.